Hi everyone, I am Greg. I have been given a fishbowl full of questions to answer about my time here at Eternal Wall. So I am going to dig right in with the first one, which was, how did you first hear about Eternal Wall? So it was September 2017. I'd just graduated university. I was doing an internship at my church in Leicester, and I just heard almost a sort of back comment in invitation. Basically, we've heard about some landmark, do you want to come along with us to go to the meeting, find out what it's about? And I love landmarks. I think like architecture and things like that is fascinating, so I was on board. But I was actually in Sheffield on the day that that meeting was taking place, and my friend was saying, oh, we could go to the cinema, we could go out for lunch, we'll have a really nice day. But there was just something inside me that was saying, you need to go to that meeting. So I ditched my friend in Sheffield and said, right, I've got to go to this. So I caught the early train back to Leicester, and I went along to this meeting, and I just sat there and was overwhelmed by the vision. I just thought, this is something else. It's just extraordinary. And the Holy Spirit was just there, really, really present, and my heart was racing, and I was like, I need to be involved in this. So I went up to Richard and said, I don't know what I have to offer, but I need to be involved in this project. So he gave me his card, said, call me in a few days once you've had time to pray about it. I called him 2 hours later and said, I am in. There was no doubt in my mind that I needed to be involved. And from there, the rest is history, and hopefully will be answered with these other questions. So, this one. Tell us some behind the scenes info on what it's like working with Richard Gamble. It is never boring. It is an adventure. He's a visionary, so he just has ideas and throws them around left, right and centre, and you just sort of have to catch them as they fall. He'll come out with some of the most incredible and outrageous stories, some of which I just couldn't tell here, but just hilarious. And yeah, it's not always straightforward working with Rich, but it is always exciting, and it's not just an employee-boss relationship. He is one of my good friends, so it is a joy to be around him, which he can pay me for saying later. What growth have you seen since working for Eternal Wall? Well, when I joined, we didn't even have an office. So I think maybe the month after I joined, we rented a little office space at a church in Leicester, where we only had that room for about 6 hours of a day. So when we got there, we had to move all the stuff out of the way from when they had their meeting on Sunday. We did 6 hours of work and then moved everything back in. I think our only decoration was, at one point, we had a glass of water with a few daffodils in. That was the beauty that was brought to the office. So it was very humble beginnings. And then we upgraded to an office in Loughborough, which was about the size of the little pod that's been set up for me here. We squeezed in 4 desks. When we moved in, the person said, well, somebody managed to fit 2 desks in here. That was amazing. And we managed to fit in 4. And the 4 of us just sort of squeezed in. And since then, we've just sort of grown. The team's grown, the rooms have grown, and we're now in, the equivalent of a sort of small village hall, which is amazing to just see and think, oh wow, we have grown. So that's been good. Next question is, when have you most seen hope visible so far? Well, that's from our tagline, Make Hope Visible, which, I mean, is what we do on a daily basis. Every time we share an answered prayer, it brings hope to someone. When's the most significant time I've seen that happen? Rich is really good whenever he preaches. Obviously that hasn't happened for a while, but I used to go round with him to churches, and he'd tell stories of the time his back got healed, or the time he had incredible provision for a holiday. There are all sorts of stories that he has of God showing up, and he says them and people respond in faith, and then their backs get healed and they get similar provision. And then, across the weeks after that, we'll see answer prayers coming in saying, oh, I heard you preach and this happened for us. So hope is spreading as we tell these stories, and it will only continue to do so as we grow, which is very exciting. So, next question. how did you move from being a volunteer to working for Eternal Wall? Yeah, so I've said I started in September 2017, and that was just as a volunteer while I was doing my church internship. But towards the end of that year, I wanted to work for Eternal Wall. It felt only right that it was God's calling, that he was saying, this is actually something I want you to start focusing on a more full-time basis. So I started to raise my own sponsorship, basically. So I sent out letters to friends and family and just said, this is a project, this is what I feel God's calling me into, will you support me? And I was really surprised by the people that did support, actually. It wasn't who you'd necessarily expect. Like I sort of had my hit list and I thought, well, these are the people that will definitely give, and then these are the possibles. And actually most of the people that gave were from the possible list and were not people I'd have expected, but they were so faithful and just gave so generously so that I could work at Eternal Wall full time. And I've now moved on from that sponsorship model, but it was really formative for me to see people show up so faithfully in their giving. So thank you to any of you who are watching. Ooh. Next question is, where's the most exciting place you've been to with Eternal Wall? Well, I've always had dreams of one day going international, but I think we need to stick in the UK for a little while until it's built. But I have been all over the place. We went to Minehead with Spring Harvest in 2019. Minehead was beautiful. That was great fun. It's near Bristol. I can't remember what it's called, I'm very sorry. A beautiful town, I'm sorry if you're from there. A beautiful town near Bristol on the coast, and it was wonderful. I drove home sort of along the beachfront, and that was amazing. So just being able to travel across the UK, often getting up at 5 a.m. and getting in at 9 p.m. or from driving around all over the country, but it's worth it for the adventure. Next question, what do you love most about Eternal Wall? Well, about the project itself, I love the whole thing, the vision, the idea that as we share answered prayer, it builds faith and hope in others and actually creates breakthrough in the spiritual so that people begin to see the same miracles in their own life. And I think that will be a key part of revival. I think as people flock to see this incredible building that's beautiful, they actually discover parts of Jesus in these stories, and that will be fundamental on their walk towards him, and we'll see salvations and healings. And yeah, I think this nation will be transformed because, at least in part, because of Eternal Wall. Personally, I just love the team. I think we're such an awesome group of people, and it's a pleasure to be involved in something like this, and we're very supportive of one another, so it can be pretty tough here. It's never a smooth journey. It's all over the place, highs and lows, but we're always in it together, so that's amazing. So, penultimate question. What's the most amazing thing that's happened to you at Eternal Wall? So, I was part of a campaign that some of you may remember if you've been with us for long enough, called 2019 Heroes, which was at the end of 2019, and we needed to raise, I think it was £165,000 to pay all the costs for our planning application. So we were praying that money in, and we raised a campaign to spend 40 days trying to get that money in, basically. And we were praying it in, we were fasting, we were trying to really intercede to make sure that that provision would come in. We trusted that it would, but we knew that we had a part to play in making that happen. And on the last day, we was still, I think it was £1,000 short, but we had only had a day to find £1,000, and it had been rough going, and we were like, we're so close to that target, but we weren't quite there. So we were praying it in, and I actually got a word for Richard earlier that week that had been really impactful for him, and actually I found out later meant something different to him as it did to me, which I think is a cool way that God speaks. But we were praying in that money, and on that final day, it didn't actually come in. And it didn't come in until the following Wednesday. But not only did the £1,000 come in, I was just sitting on my sofa at home, working from home that day, opened up my email, looked at it, and just saw a very casual email that said, "Oh, thank you for the bank details. I've just deposited £20,000. And I was just sort of taken aback a bit. There was no beating around the bush. That was just all it said. And so I called my colleague Helen and just said, "Is there a £20,000 deposit in the bank account?" And she looked, and I just sort of heard her gasp and laugh down the phone. And not only did we hit that target then, we'd well exceeded it by £19,000. We later found out that the woman that gave that money the week prior, on the day that the target was meant to be hit, had been trying to give, but there'd been complications that meant she couldn't. So had everything gone to plan, she would have got the money in on that day. So that was a pretty incredible story, and to have been able to play a part quite intimately in that moment was very special for me. So on to the last question. What famous people have you met with Eternal Wool? I sometimes get a bit shy around people, so I've sort of seen people from afar. I suppose famous in Christian circles. At Spring Harvest, we did have Pete Greig walk into the room where we were running our little Eternal Wool stand, asking where a different room was. So I guided him to that room. That was lovely. He seemed very thankful for my help. I met some MPs. I drove one of the MPs who was on our judging panel and picked him up from the train station. I did that with a few people. One of the members who worked on the Angel of the North, I drove her around. So I sort of chauffeured some cool people who have really, really good stories. But yeah, we'll see who else we meet once COVID is over. I'm sure there'll be some more cool people that will show up in different areas. So thank you so much for watching me play The Big Dip. Be sure to tune in every Friday to our podcast, Eternal Wool, Stories of Answered Prayer, and our YouTube channel to hear more people answering silly and interesting questions. See you next time.